Welcome back to another episode of Kicking It with Coach Red, where we bring you all the news, stories, takes, and opinions about your favorite teams from the Pacific Northwest, from the good to the bad to the Mariners.
Sweet, sweet Mariners.
The sweetest of sweet. We're so close. I think we're on right around 60-ish days until opening day. Spring training starts in a couple of weeks. It's going to be exciting, but with the Mariners making some minimal moves for minor league deals for relievers or major league deals for relievers. Not a whole lot's going on there. The Seahawks are still in their coaching search. The UW, as Fish has been able to land some players in the transfer portal, keeping some guys that went into the portal at home, but that team is still taking shape. So, with not a whole lot of hot button items going on, we're going to go with a little bit of a throwback episode where we just ask a couple of questions back and forth and get some honest opinions about a wide variety of topics that relate to sports and more specifically the Seattle sports. But before we dive into that, why don't I tell you a little bit about us? If you're looking for a guy that could be maybe in line for a spot on Dancing with the Stars, because during this episode, I'm going to be on my toes and nimble and go through these questions and basically get all tens from the judges. So if you're looking for a guy like that, you're looking for a guy like me, your boy Coach Red. You can find me on X at the real Coach Red, on Instagram at the real underscore Coach Red, TikTok at the real Coach Red. Also find the show over on YouTube. Search Kicking It with Coach Red. Like, subscribe, hit the bell notifications, leave a comment or two. And while you're at it, follow the show's page on X and Insta at Coach Red Pod. Follow us, follow us, follow us. Do it, freaking do it.
And
And
I,
it,
for one, yeah, I can say that I've seen Coach Red dance beautifully in a Speedo, and he dances like sponge sugar.
I
It
mean,
really.
I'm like a whirling dervish.
Okay. Yeah. Actually, I don't want to visualize that, but
And now, if you're looking for a guy that's going to be a little bit more to the point, maybe a little callous, maybe the reincarnation of Simon Cowell on this episode. Maybe he will come in with an accent. I don't know, but if you're looking for a guy like that, you're looking for a guy like Scott, aka Scott the Thought, aka Scottish Cheese.
all right, I'm here to involve all my insight and just give it to you. This is going to be a fun
Un-
episode here.
Unfiltered.
Unfiltered.
Scott Unfiltered.
Well, we're both in the construction industry, so we do kind of filter it a little bit when we're on here. But if we talk at work, yeah, it's a little more unfiltered. So,
So, so yeah, we're just gonna go back and forth. Questions abound, and just kind of see where this episode goes. It's gonna be a magical mystery ride. So buckle up, Buckaroos.
10-4. Well, Coach Red, I've got some questions for you. You've got some questions for me, but you're like the amazing Kreskin on Johnny Carson. So you have all this kind of insight and wisdom, and it's almost psychic how answers bubble up to you over time. But my question, being a Seattle native, um, we just spent a lot of money building Climate Pledge Arena. It's a beautiful facility, I'm told. A friend of mine took his daughter to go see Taylor Swift there for like $1,200 a ticket. He's a much better father than I would have been because I never would have spent that money to see her. But regardless, I mean, good for her, good for Climate Pledge. But so there's fancy concerts there, and we've got the Kraken. So this is a two-part question. What's it going to take for Seattle to be a hockey team, a city? Because we haven't traditionally been a hockey city. Yes, we have the Thunderbirds, which I've watched since I was a little boy. It used to be at the Coliseum, which was renovated to become Key Arena, which was torn down to become Climate Pledge Arena. I've also seen them play in Kent. It's a lot of fun, but it's not a sport that's usually, you know, part of Seattle's history. And then the other question I have, the sport that really is part of Seattle's history is the NBA and basketball. So when are we getting our Sonics back? Are we really a hockey city? And when are we getting our Sonics back? Because if we don't get the Sonics back, how are we going to get the value out of what we've paid into that arena as taxpayers and the private investors too?
Mm. I'll start with the Sonics question. Adam Silver in the NBA board has come out and said that as soon as expansion happens, that Seattle will be getting a team, most likely Las Vegas as well. Um, so with that, there's been timelines that showed it as early as 2025, but it's kind of a moving target, if you will. I After the Sonics left for OKC, and I kind of just turned off the NBA as a whole. Like I know
I
the
haven't. What
players, I know the stars and stuff like that. I enjoy the All-Star weekend festivities, but that's about it. I'll buy in once they're back, but I think the tough thing is that it's just that moving target, and then what's that, you know, new franchise going to look like? Who are you going to be able to get early on? You're going to want to get some key name players by spending some cash, but I think it's something that's going to happen within the next couple of years. And yeah, that's going to help bring in a ton of revenue for that arena. I've seen a comedy show there. I'm slated to see another one there later this year, and it's a cool little place. I mean, it's a work of art almost too. You know, there's different areas in there that you can go through, a lot of open areas too. So it would be awesome seeing a hockey game there. But when you talk about Seattle being a hockey town and do they have the ability to get there, I think that it comes down to a lot of key things. So their first year, after the Las Vegas Knights went to the Stanley Cup in their inaugural year, the Kraken didn't do that. It was kind of a slog that season, and I think that you garnered a lot of buzz early on, and some of it tapered off. What helped reinvigorate that was going to the playoffs last year and knocking out the defending Stanley Cup champs in the Colorado Avalanche in a 7-game series. Fun watch. Watched most of that series. I think the thing that makes it a little bit tougher is cost to get in the door.
Mhm.
That first year it was astronomical. It dipped a little bit last year, but I looked at tickets as early as today on some secondary market tickets, and per ticket you're $125 to get in the door. So with if you go with a partner or a friend, it's $250, and then you're also going to drop about 60 plus bucks on food and alcohol. So you're sitting there with an all in total between the two of you at probably close to 350, $400. And that's a pretty big investment. And the other
That's not a
thing
middle
is,
class investment.
and the other thing is when you look at the ways to watch it, it's tough when with the root sports thing that's going on right now and the uncertainty around that. At the end of MLB season, it got moved to the Premier Sports Network on Comcast. So that was a jump up of $20. You know, how are you going to get the cord cutters to do that? Granted, it Root Sports is on Fubo TV, which is a cost savings, but it's tough when you come into this. You definitely have the diehards. It looks packed every time I see it. There's a lot of fanfare around the team by a select group of people. And like you talked, going to your Thunderbirds games, there's also the Everett Silvertips. So there has been hockey around here, and even a former Stanley Cup winning team in the Seattle Metropolitan. So I think that it has the ability to get there. I just think that it's just such a high get in the door. And I think that especially with hockey, when you're watching it on TV, sometimes it's hard to follow the puck around
So
when it's
fast.
getting slung around. You know, it's good to see, it's fun to see the fights, it's fun to see the energy that the crowd has, but that get in the door price is not feasible for a lot of people. And especially when you look at it, you want to get the young kids involved. So if I take my kid, I know that I'm buying a cotton candy, I'm buying a drink, I'm buying some food, probably having to buy a buoy plush toy as well, throw in there. So if we go in there, shoot, we're popping $500 on one trip. So I think that being able to make it more affordable is key, because you looked at the run that the Seahawks had before they had the Legion of Boom and all that stuff. Ticket prices were pretty reasonable when they went to the Super Bowl and followed that up. If you could get a ticket at the beginning of the year from the box office, it was very tough to do. In secondary markets, you were paying $200 to be in the nosebleeds. So I think that making it a little bit more accessible to people is going to be the key, because I think that this town loves winners, and they went on a 9 game winning streak. I got bought in a little bit more, but it's also they play weird times. You're playing on the East Coast and you're playing at 4 o'clock. How conducive is it to watch when you get home if most of the population in the area is working until 4 or 5 o'clock? You're missing some of that. So I think that being able to get a little bit more visibility is the key, especially for a wider range of people, and then make it a little bit more affordable to get into the game.
Well, and I like hockey as a sport. I think back to one of my heroes, George Carlin, said basically hockey is soccer, I believe, but instead of a ball with dots, you've got a puck and you've got a stick and you get to beat the crap out of people. And that's much more manly than soccer is, in my opinion, when people are flopping and rolling around trying to say, "Oh, I got kicked in the shin," and it's almost a fatal injury. I think you're right. I mean, it's the problem with a lot of professional sports. I mean, when I was growing up as a kid in this town, we could go to the Coliseum and watch the Sonics play. And it didn't break my dad's account. It was $10 a ticket. A beer was a buck 50 or a hot dog. And I know going back to those times, yeah, well, inflation, but it's gotten so expensive. So unfortunately, in this town, if you want to go watch a game, a lot of times, unless you want a nosebleed ticket with the Mariners, you basically need to have a company offer you a ticket.
Yep.
I mean, I'm not paying $500 to go see a hockey game, but if one of the vendors that we work with say, "Hey, you want to go to a hockey game with me?" Hell yeah, I'll go buy the jersey and everything and be there in a New York second. Um, about the NBA coming back, I would love to see the Sonics because I loved them when I was a little boy. I watched them all the time. I saw them play many times. Again, the tickets were affordable. A middle class family could afford to go. But you know, Daniel Stern, the way he was just laughing at us as the town as it exited, I'm the way I feel about that dead person, it's not good. I mean, it is not good. I mean, it was humiliating. And I have friends that won't drink Starbucks, and I have not watched a game. Now, granted, when the Seahawks left, I was living in Texas at the time, but I mean, I have not watched an NBA game since they went to Oklahoma. I have not watched one. I don't know who won the playoffs last year. I don't care. So
Yeah.
how is the NBA? Yes, we should have the first team, blah, blah, blah. But how receptive are people like me that are like, we got burnt because we spent a lot of money, taxpayer money, renovating that stadium, and to just get them yanked out there. And then Charles Schultz and the rest of those guys at Starbucks. I mean, and those clowns in Oklahoma City. Oh, we'll never take the team out of Seattle. Yeah,
Yeah.
right, you liars. You knew that from the very beginning you were going to do that.
I think that it would be good when the Sonics do come back is to reach out to some of the local legends that played for or were affiliated with the Seattle area to be brand ambassadors, especially in the beginning. You've got Sean Kemp, local business owner
No,
still
no,
in
go
the
back to
area.
Slick Watts. Go back
Yeah,
to
get
downtown Freddie Brown. Go to
get
Jack Sikma. I
get
mean,
Gary Payton back. He's still a Northwest guy. Get
yeah.
Isaiah Thomas, UW, local to the area, has been championing them to come back. And how cool would it be if it was like at the end of Kevin Durant's career to being, one of the last guys drafted to finish his career back in Seattle. That would be kind of cool.
Yeah, but also the NBA needs to make some amends too, because we were a great basketball town before the Sonics were torn from us. So, there's that business side of it. I get it, but yeah, there's some people with some bad blood.
Yeah. Speaking of the Sonics, when Seattle gets a team back, if the NBA said they could not be named the Sonics, what name would you give to the incoming basketball team?
Mm. The Seattle Sasquatches, or
Who?
is it
I mean, the Sasquatch was pretty prevalent with the Sonics as
Squatches?
well.
The Squatches, yeah.
Seattle
Uh,
Squatches,
or we could do a Canadian version of the Trailer Park Boy, the Sam Squanches.
Sam Squatches.
Yeah, I mean, you know, th- there, I,
They're
they
going to
may,
be the Sonics. We
yeah, they
know
have
that.
to be the Sonics because, the Supersonics, I mean, the Sonics, Boeing, that whole connection, that's Northwest. They have to be the Supersonics. I mean,
See, I almost wanted to go something different, but I know that the NBA would not go for it due to uh, the recent suspension of, say, John Morant, but the Seattle six shooters have a gun on there, and just because you run a 5 man on the court and you want to have the 6 man that's just a lights out shooter, you want six shooters on your team. That's a good integration, but with the gun problems that we have, and especially with one of the top players last year getting in trouble for flashing his guns around and then continuing to do it and getting suspended for a period of time. Probably wouldn't fly with the NBA, but I think it would be a fun little moniker for the team.
well, another one might be, all you need to do is go downtown Seattle now and you can have the psychotic schizophrenics.
Oh, boom!
That'd be kind of
Have
fun.
like have like have like some floor seats where you bring them in from the streets.
Yeah, they can have the pom poms. We'll see what they'll do during halftime. Oh, it's actually sad. I should make fun of them, but yeah, that's downtown Seattle, which it is. So, okay, well, I want to challenge you with something. I'm going to go a little out of order. This is one of my later questions, but I want to give it to you now.
Okay.
You're from Eastern Washington or Central Washington, but for those that aren't from Washington State, the Cascades, there is a big dividing line between East and West. And the fact that you've been a Husky fan since you were a little boy, east of the mountains versus a Wazoo fan or a Gonzaga fan or a Wazoo fan, you've been really with the Huskies. And we just had a little bit of a heartbreak, even though I take pride in them doing as well as they did. With this portal opening up and with Alabama stealing our coach or, paying the coach all this money to come to Alabama, even though we were ranked ahead of them at the end of the season. What's left of the Huskies? Are they going to be a top 20 team next year? Um, is there a lot of talent coming behind, or is that all draining away because of the portal?
Uh, the portal graduation and declaring for the NFL draft has really put the Huskies in a tough spot. It's put some of the other teams in a pretty tough spot too, with the likes of Alabama. There's been people that have transferred out of there, with Jim Harbaugh taking the Chargers job today. You would assume that they would promote the guy that was the head coach when Harbaugh got a slap on the wrist by the NCAA. But if they go outside of that, it's going to be crazy. And then Arizona, who we got the coach for, and San Jose State, who got their coach taken from them to go to Arizona. I mean, it's a revolving door. And the thing is, especially with it happening this late in the season, because you're outside of the regular transfer portal window. So really the only guys that can enter the portal right now before spring starts are teams that had a head coaching change. And that opens up the NCAA kicker for it's a 30-day window where you can go into the portal. And there's been a boatload of guys that have went into the portal for the Huskies. Their top two tackles are going to the NFL draft, and their entire offensive line starters from the national championship game are either in the portal or committed to Alabama in the likes of Parker Brailsford. But some of their two deeps are not here anymore. Um, Luckily, there's been some movement, especially over the weekend, where Jed Fish has brought in some guys that were either committed to Arizona or played at Arizona last year. And especially the last couple of days, you're getting some reaffirmations from people that didn't go in the portal that they're sticking around, and some guys that did go into the portal that decided to stay. The big one is Will Rogers, the quarterback that was going to be a transfer in from Mississippi State, was on the sideline for the national championship game. DeBoer goes to Alabama. He goes into the portal immediately. And then I think it was 2 days ago or yesterday, he announces that he's going to stay at the University of Washington, which is key because all of their quarterbacks went into the portal. Your wide receiver room, you have no wide receiver, tight end, quarterback, running back that got an offensive line. Your entire offensive side of the ball, not one starter from last year's team is back right now, currently on this team. There's some that are in the portal that could come back. And with all that being said, it's going to be tough this upcoming year, but it's also going to be interesting to see with the change of going to the Big Ten in lieu of the Pac 12. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out because when you look at the Big Ten, that's really become a staunchy defensive type conference that also has a lot of emphasis on the run game, where the Pac 12 was you've got three guys currently, Bo Nix, Michael Penix, and Caleb Williams, that could all potentially be first round draft choices. And
Sure.
you look at some of the wide receivers in this conference as well that have done well at this level and at the next level. It's going to be interesting to see how that dynamics play in that new conference. Do I think that the Huskies could end as a top 25 team? I think it could if things shake out well enough. It's going to be a transition year. It's going to be Jed Fish finalizing his coaching staff. He still has a few defensive spots that need to be filled, and then really get a full cycle of recruiting in. It's going to be interesting to see when the spring portal opens up, how many guys they can get in the door. But it's going to be an interesting year. There's going to be a lot of love for the guys that decided to stick around, and I think you're going
Sure.
to see a lot of support for that. And you're coming off that high. You knew that even if DeBoer stayed, that this was going to be a different team than you had last year, just with the NFL ready talent or the guys that were graduating. But you got an accelerated mass exodus because of his departure and his assistants that also went to Alabama. So it could be a tough year. You're going to see some ups and downs. I have a feeling that, that game against Northwestern might be a little closer than I would like it to be in a normal year. But I think it's going to be a really interesting year, and it's going to be wild to see how the Big Ten changes with the addition
Yeah.
of the four Pac 12 teams.
Yeah.
But
No,
could be good. They could be not good. But that's why you play the game between the fields. I was talking to someone that, well, why do this team's supposed to win? How come they didn't win? It's like, well, because that's why we play the game, ladies and boys.
I just remember all those years, with Don James, back in the 70s and 80s, that he just every year he was going to the Rose Bowl. He was one of the top ranked teams. And then in 92, that's the year I graduated from college, not the UW, but I remember that team. That was the number one team that was tied with Nebraska before they had the college playoff. So we really never knew who the top team was. But after that, then there was some busts with alumni paying students. There's Billy
Yep.
Joe Hobart, and I think Kaufman may have been involved in some of that stuff. They didn't have spectacular NFL careers, but um, I mean, we're talking over 30 years. It takes a long time to build that team.
Mhm.
And so I hope we don't take the dip that we did after 92.
Yeah, because it was really until Sarkeesian came in and then Chris Peterson after him, and then you had the Jimmy Lake dip. and then DeBoer brings it back. The one thing is, with this being such a sports city and a lot of influential and big pocketbook people in the area, I think this is always going to be a destination college town because one, the setting that you get on that field
Oh yeah.
is second to none. Um, our head coach is courtside with Steve Ballmer. He's already making sure, you've got these people that can put money into the NIL. And from all indications, the Huskies were a top 10 NIL school in the amount of dollars going out the door. So, they're going to be able to compete that way. Yeah, there's going to be guys. I don't expect Jed Fish to finish the entirety of his contract. After what he did at Arizona, if he can come in and have a good season and a bowl win this year and then be on that fringe for the new 12-team playoff uh, setup that they've got going forward starting next year. If he can be in that conversation, this is a guy that's bounced around quite a bit, but a lot of it was at a coordinator. His real first head coaching job was at Arizona. If he can replicate what he did there, I think that the NFL is going to come calling because he's worked under Pete Carroll, he's worked under Sean McVay, he's worked under Bill Belichick. So he's got a pretty good list of people that he's got a resume. And if he can build up two programs at the college level, I'll see him jump. But I think that this job is going to be more and more attractive as the times go on, especially if you can continue to sustain the success that you've had over the last decade and really grow on that and be able to open up to more of those East Coast markets by being in the Big Ten.
Yeah, those Willingham years were pretty brutal.
I still remember 0-12 and losing an OT to the Cougs. It was the worst day of my life. That was an under 21. I need to drink some beer. Who's got a friend? Days.
10-4. So,
Um. All right, let's go with this, Scott. I got a little question for you. Doesn't
mhm.
have to be a professional sports team. Could be a college. Could even be a high school. But in the state of Washington, who is your favorite mascot? And I want to preface this: it's not like the Mariner Moose. It'd be like the Mariners.
Oh no. I have to go with my alma mater.
I knew you were gonna go there.
The Evergreen State College Gooey Ducks. And if you're not from here and you don't know what a gooey duck is, it's a giant clam with a big, huge neck sticking out of the clam that looks like something that is not of a clam.
It
But
looks
that's
phallic.
very phallic. Yeah, no, the Evergreen State College Gooey Ducks. You got to look up our fight song. We're going to squirt or siphon the competition away. It's really a powerful clam, and I'm very proud of that. And it's better than the San Jose State banana slugs.
Very true. Very true.
So, anyways, yeah, I really did enjoy going to Evergreen. It was probably the only college I could have made it in. But yeah, for sports, they're not so well known. They've got like a basketball team that isn't great, and I think they got a volleyball team, and I think they have a vodka bong hit team too,
Oh
which
yeah,
I may have been a part of
you
back
might
in the
have
day.
joined
Yeah.
at least the rec league.
Yeah. No, actually, I played rugby for a couple of years at Evergreen as kind of a intramural thing. But I remember we went to Fort Lewis and challenged the Army Rangers rugby team, and it was quite brutal.
I can imagine.
they were just chucking us hippies around like sacks of potatoes. But the party afterwards was epic, and I don't remember all of it. So, all right, let's see what I got for you because I know we're kind of we're getting kind of long-winded here a little bit. I want to talk about the Seahawks because this is another huge cultural and coaching change. Um, Seeing Pete go, there's a lot of mixed feelings. Was he becoming too predictable? But you just love those those Coach Carroll teams and what he was able to do for this town. Probably the most consequential professional quote coach we've always had. But when Pete is kind of not the coach anymore, we're going to get a new coach in here. who's going to determine who the QB is going to be. So I'm looking at some of the coaches that are coming in. We got Dan Quinn. We got the offensive coordinator. What for the Lions? Are we talking to
Ben
him?
Johnson.
Ben Johnson and some others. Are these coaches want to keep um, Gino around? And Gino's not a bad quarterback. He can be a starting quarter. He's probably I've seen him ranked number 9, number 12. Well, that's not a bad position for your quarterback to be. But, what's his upside? And can we bring on a quarterback in the draft to go under him, or are we fine with Drew Lock? I just think the quarterback position, I've got some follow-up questions for the Hawks too, but I just want to start with that one.
I think that with um, it's going to really depend on the timeline of when they hire that coach and who they bring in. That's going to be the first key because you want to make sure that you have enough time so the coach can talk to Gino, study his film a little bit more in depth, and really make that decision on is he going to be the guy going forward for the rest of that contract, which is only 2 more years. It's tough because with that, as a head coach, you're often tied to what your team does as a whole, and a lot of that ends on the shoulders of the quarterback. But like you said, he's a guy that's, middle of the pack to above average by most metrics when you look at it there. And going into next year, he'll be, before these new deals shake out, the 18th highest paid quarterback. So you're getting good value there.
Yeah.
And the big thing is with Snyder and Pete Carroll, when they made the deal for Russ, one of the caveats was they liked Drew Lock, and you saw what he could do this year. He leads a game-winning drive against the Philadelphia Eagles, and in the start before when he was filling in for an injured Geno Smith, he played pretty well in that 49ers game too. It was oblique injury that got Geno late in the week, so there wasn't a ton of practice for him. Didn't really absorb many hits, got the ball out pretty quickly. You still saw that gunslinger him in a little bit, but I think with all of that, you feel pretty comfortable, at least from our perspective, how both of those guys looked, and with the talent on that surrounds them, that's going to be the key to really pushing them over the top. So I think that when it comes to Gino, I think that you'd be tough pressed to find a guy with more value who can lead a team. You could look at the rookie class, but where the Seahawks are drafting, you really, if you're going to turn the keys over when it comes to this class, you're going to have to take that pick at 16, and who is going to be available at that point, and are they going to be ready? Because if you make that transition, then Geno Smith is not on this roster. You probably look at a guy that's been in the building, Drew Lock, for another minimal type deal, or maybe bring in, say, a Gardner Minshew, who's shown the ability to win for other teams as that bridge quarterback. If you don't think the guy's ready, but you're not going to be paying him the money that you'd be paying Geno Smith.
I think Gino's worth another year. We need, he is a very good team member.
He's
He's
a
a very
phenomenal leader.
Yeah, he is. And he's 33. Well, he hasn't taken all the shots that Russell Wilson did.
I mean, he's one. It would be really interesting to see his career arc if he didn't get sucker punched by that defensive guy in the locker room for the Jets.
Yeah,
It
well,
could
yeah.
have been a completely different story.
Or that's the humility he needed, because I remember him on draft day kind of whining and crying when he fell to the second round. And it's like, dude, you got to prove it in this league. And he was served a big slice of humble pie. And but his attitude on this team when he's taken over the reins, I think, has been outstanding. And Drew Lock, like you say, as he's coming, I don't think we need to draft a quarterback this year. Maybe take a flyer on some possible, Brock Purdy in the later rounds, but I don't
Like a
think this is
Jordan
the
Travis coming off injury from Florida State. He's a guy that, I mean, the NCAA committee said without Jordan Travis, we don't think that you're a Final Four team. So he's a guy that's out of eligibility. He's going to be recovering from injury. It's kind of
like
like the
Hooker.
Hendon Hooker
Yep.
situation. So if you feel comfortable with that and stashing him on IR for a whole year, and then really letting the reins go. If you feel comfortable with that college tape, yeah, that's a play to go with, and it's going to be really fun to see with Pete Carroll coming out and John Snyder both saying, we competed against each other. We wanted to push each other forward. So it's going to be really interesting to see with Snyder making all of the personnel decisions now and it being solely on his shoulder, what direction this team goes forward as.
Yeah, I got more Seahawks questions, but it's your turn, I think.
Okay. Well, I have a Seahawks question right here.
All right.
If the NFL was to start a Mortal Kombat tournament, pick your fighter, and you had to pick all-time Seahawks, you have to pick one lineman and one skill player. Who are you picking and why?
I have a lot of ideas on this one. Lineman, offensive lineman, Walter Jones. I think he allowed 6 sacks in his entire career.
He's a monster too.
I mean, I remember every year we were always panicking because he wouldn't show up for, training camp. Yeah, there was always a deal, but it was all a show because he didn't need to go to training camp. He was just a naturally strong, powerful guy that knew what to do. And whether it was Hasselback or whomever, I think it was Hasselback most of the career. I mean, he didn't have to worry about his blind side. And that's one. But if it's a defensive lineman, this may be a little before your time, maybe not, but Cortez Kennedy. I mean, when he and Sam Adams were plugging up that middle, they would have solved all of Seattle's problems last year. Even playing like they did back then without the modern game, they could have played the modern game. I mean, the way they just ragdoll, running backs coming through there, quarterbacks. Um, I don't know. Walter Jones, Cortez Kennedy.
Those are two those are two solid choices. Who would you have as a skill player to represent the Seahawks in a battle to the death?
Well, I'm wearing a Kenny is Easley jersey. When I played high school football, I played some safety and he was my hero. I mean, he was Cam Chancellor before Cam Chancellor. He was an oversized safety. He was great at interceptions. He just would do these pick sixes and he would run so smoothly. He was and man, he would just thump people. Unfortunately, his career was really short because when you thump people like that, like Jamal Adams does or did, it takes a toll. And I think he was taking like 30 Tylenol a day, killing his liver and um, his kidneys in order to play. But he was so smooth. And of course, Cam Chancellor. And I read that Cam Chancellor actually dated Kenny Easley's daughter in high
Ooh,
school.
ooh,
So I wouldn't want a disagreement between those two men.
no,
But I got some others too. He played with us a short time. John Randall, remember him with the he was wearing the oil. And he was just a
yep.
vicious, crazy dude. We got him toward the end. He was mostly a Viking, but he was something else. And then Brandon Browner, who's in the can,
Yep.
right? You
Clink,
know,
clinked
he's
up.
a for quite a while. Because he was kind of an antisocial kind of guy. So he comes, but if I want to go back even further, I'm going to throw some names out. And these are for the older Seahawks fans. There was a linebacker we had in the 80s. His name was Fred Young, and he spelled Fred with 2 D's because every time he hit you, he made you stutter. And that guy thumped people. I used to watch him when I was in high school, and he was just awesome. And then another guy back at that time, I would say, is John L. Williams. Um,
Fullback,
he
right?
fullback, and he could catch the ball. He had the softest hands. If you needed 4 yards, if it was 3rd and 6, you gave it to him. If you wanted to open up the hole for Kurt Warner or Chris Warren, we've always had good running backs in this town. He could just pry a hole open, and I think he was traded to the Steelers, and I think Fred Young was too. Bad, and it's just too bad. But and then there was also Brian Blades. Uh, he kind of comes to mind a little bit.
Yep.
You doing the gang signs from being from Miami. Him and his brother Benny Blades. Uh, I mean, he'd shank somebody on the field if he had to,
If you let him.
if you let him. But I definitely would not pick Bosworth.
No,
Yeah.
soft as cotton.
Bo Jackson kind of slammed the chapter shut on him. So, anyways, that's kind of yeah. Being a Seahawks fan for as long as I can remember, it's been fun to watch this team. Not always in the 80s and 90s, but lately they've been competitive and not the irrelevant team that I remember when they first came out in 76.
Yeah. I'll give you some guys that I kind of bounced around when I thought of this question myself. And they're going to be a little bit more newer age guys. But in the line side, Breno Giacomini, I want to give a shout out to him just because he was an honorary SOB. And I feel like he would be a good representative. But the one that I would actually pick for the line is Big Al Woods. Dude, that guy is country strong. He is a farmer in the off season, and I
Don't
want
you feel some sort of, camaraderie with McQuiston?
shut up, dude. That guy, get out of here. Come on. No, give me Big Al Woods. I want his finishing
Yeah.
move where he like brings the guy in close and just bear hugs him until the body explodes.
Yeah,
And then
absolutely.
if you're looking for skill positions, one guy who I think could take on larger opponents and has a couple of screws loose, Earl Thomas would be an under the radar type guy. But I would also pick DK Metcalf just because he is bigger, faster, stronger than most other skill players. And it would be really cool for his finishing move with like his 8 pack of abs. If they like, because you have the one move in Mortal Kombat where they fire the spheres at the other guys, but he has like 8 spheres go out and it just encompasses the guy and
Just
murders him.
smashes them. Yeah.
You're killed by the 14 pack of abs that TK Metcalf has.
DK
And
is
then
def
and then afterwards, after you get it, how they do the final victory, and sometimes they have the people cheering. It's just Pete with his shirt off from the combine.
adding pixie dust to the
Yeah,
to the
throwing gum
yeah,
everywhere.
yeah.
Chubb
Well,
double bubble is now littered the fighting ring. We'll take a 5 minute intermission before the next fight.
Walter Jones and Cortez Kennedy, that would have been a frog splash the way they would just eliminate people, you
Oh,
know.
it'd
I
be
mean,
mm, awesome to see.
yeah, just mauling them. So, anyways,
So I know I've talked about things that we love, and Scott, this is episode 3 with Kicking It with Coach Red, and usually we look at the bright and shiny side of things, and or at least try to. But I want to know what teams you hate, and I want an MLB team, an NFL team, an NCAA school, and an NBA team too, if you got it.
NFL, the Cowboys, and the Eagles. I
America's team.
Yeah, I want Jerry Jones to live a very fine life and pass away, never seeing his Cowboys ever making the playoffs ever again. I lived in Texas for 7 years. I have a lot of friends in Texas. I have a lot of appreciation for Texas. Um, it was very important that I went there when I did, but I've always hated the Cowboys. And I remember when I was a little boy, like I was 5 years old asking my dad, because the Seahawks didn't come around yet. And I said, well, who can I root for? My dad said, well, you can choose this guy in the fedora and his Cowboys, or you can take this team, the Steelers, with guys with no teeth and, just absolutely thump people. So I was a Steelers fan before I was a Cowboys fan. So I never liked the Cowboys. Um, yeah, the team just bugs me. The
They're just
49ers,
the continual hype train with you know 40-year
this is the
lapses in
year. Yeah.
productivity.
Oh, geez. Yeah, give it up, guys. I mean, you guys suck And the problem is your ownership. And until you realize that, you're never going to get past one game in the playoffs. I don't care if you go 17-0, you're losing the first game in the playoffs when you go there. So I don't like them. 49ers used to be the team I disliked, but the rivalry I appreciate with the Seahawks, how it's kind of ebbs and flows, and
Yep.
the same with the Rams. I think the NFC West is a lot of fun to watch,
Mm.
so I won't do that. Basketball, Lakers.
I was shocked you didn't say Oklahoma City Thunder.
Well, them too, but I haven't watched them. See,
True.
I've never watched them. I'm
But
not interested.
they stole it from you.
Yeah, but the Lakers, I always loved watching the Celtics beat them, or the Pistons beat them. Not a Lakers fan. Absolutely despise the Yankees. Any team from New York, Philadelphia, and Boston or New Jersey can just suck it because those are the worst sports fans in the entire United States. They're a bunch of douchebags, big talkers, just a bunch of worthless mooks. So the Yankees always made me mad, and because the one thing baseball doesn't have is a salary cap. And Steinbrenner was not the richest owner in the in professional baseball. He was just the one willing to spend the most. So he
Mhm.
from the 70s through the 90s and on, as long as he was alive, it was always the Yankees. And so I don't like the Yankees, and I'm not liking the Dodgers right now because there's another example of not having a salary cap.
Yep.
And I just, it's just big problem I have. NHL, okay, I'm going to say the Canucks, the Vancouver Canucks, because they were dying for a Seattle Kraken team to have somebody that they can have that contention with. And I don't know if we're there yet, but a Seattle, Vancouver, BC rivalry would be awesome. And so I want to start hating the Canucks. Um, just
You're 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 yearning
preemptively.
you're yearning to hate the Canucks.
No, just preemptively hating the Canucks because that's what I want. The New York Rangers, yeah, whatever. But Canucks, you're going down. You're going to be second fiddle in the NHL to the
You've heard it here
Kraken
first.
from here on out. You're out. So, did I miss anybody?
NCAA.
Oregon football.
Yes. Correct. That is the correct answer.
Yes, I mean, this
Hey, let's wear 8,000 different jersey combinations. And
yeah.
the one when they played the Huskies this year looked like someone either had an accident in the bathroom and it got everywhere all over the jerseys, or like their bus got stuck on the way up and it started shooting mud everywhere when those tires were spinning.
Well, I had a former employee who was University of Oregon grad, and he came during one of the rivalry games, and he had this a yellow and green T-shirt with Ted Bundy on it, and said Ted Bundy was a Husky.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
know,
that's good.
yeah, I mean they're just digging in there. So yeah, but the Nike thing, and the Nike owner and all this, whatever. Get bent, Oregon. We beat you twice this year. Good riddance, you know. Goodbye, Bo Nix, you
See you,
know.
Bo.
Yeah, so, but they had some great years. I mean, I remember when he was playing and he
There
got
was like a
hit.
decade of dominance over UW.
Oh, jeez.
Mariota, Dennis Dixon, God, there was oh my gosh, I just had his name, but I lost it.
Yeah.
Jeremiah Masoli, another Oregon quarterback. Didn't like any one of them.
Well, there's a mind that's 20 years younger than mine that can recall that stuff. So yeah,
I just had to experience the heartbreak during those years. So it it stings. So I remember.
yeah, yeah. No, but anyways, yeah, they're a good rival too. So Um, one last question if we have time.
Yep.
There's a lot of talk about who's the next coach after Pete, and those are huge shoes to fill because I think Pete still could be a productive coach in the right circumstances. It seems like Dan Quinn is the obvious choice, but the Seahawks never do anything that's obvious. Do we need an OC minded coach or a DC minded coach coming in?
I am torn. I know that early on I was a heavy defensive minded coach because I think that you have the pieces on this team and the players to really have an impactful type defense. So, um, but you see the likes of some of these high profile named defensive coordinators kind of floating around. Vic Fangio gets released from his contract with the Dolphins today. Long-time tenured, well respected defensive side coach. Sounds like he's going to Philadelphia for a revamp. And then you've got, was it Wink Martindale, who was with the Giants this year, formerly from the Ravens. So if you can get a young up and coming offensive mind, I think is good in today's NFL because they're the first ones to get poached left and right. But I think that what you ultimately need on this team is a good players coach because the one thing that Snyder talked about was he wants to keep the culture that's been built over the course of his and Pete's time. And a lot of that's competing and letting the players be who they are. That's one thing that I think Pete didn't get as much credit for. You look at after football for some of these guys that were under Pete Carroll, they're doing big things. You've got KJ Wright who does radio spots, pregame coverages. Mike Robb's on the NFL Network. Michael Robinson. You've got Sherm that has his own podcast, and he's on the Amazon crew. You look at Marshawn Lynch, who is now in TVs and movies, and this is the guy that showed up to the Super Bowl and said, "I'm just here so I won't get fined." So he let those guys be who they were, and I think that's what really helped gel his team.
Oh,
And I
who's
think that you
Nate?
can find that.
A receiver we had. Nate. He's on.
Burleson,
Yes, here's
he's on
another
the
one.
NFL Network too. These
Yep.
are all guys that played under Pete.
It was amazing to see that shot of all the ex-players that went to Pete's dinner after,
Yeah,
you
and
know.
Russell Wilson flying up too. I
Yeah,
mean, it was special, and I think it was Russell and Sherman met Pete at the door. It's like, well, all it took was for you to leave to get us in a room and talking together again.
yeah, yeah. Well,
Just
well,
the respect and admiration they have for him. And I think that with him still being around the team, he's going to want to, I don't know what his role is going to be. He doesn't know what his role is going to be. There's some people that probably know what that's going to be, but I think he's just going to be a champion for this team. He's, not a cheerleader, but he's going to be a guy that gets people excited. He's a guy that wants to strive for winning. And that's what he talked about in his end of the year presser was, you know, as a coach, you always look for that next win. And I think that it would be poetic justice if here very soon that Pete can be on another parade and, getting to hold that trophy one more time as a part of this organization.
I hope so. I have all the love for Pete. I mean, he's been really inspirational for Seattle for so many years. So, anyways,
All right, I have one last question for you,
okay, I'm done. I
and
got
then
all
this will
mine
be
asked.
it. What's it going to take to make you an active Mariners fan again? I'll try my best with whatever you say, too.
Okay, I think one thing is without a salary cap, looking at the Dodgers team, it's like it's so defeating to see that and it's not that the Seattle owners don't have money. They've always been really stingy. They want the team, they want,
It's a
fans coming
revenue
in.
source from them, not a
It
championship
it's not a passion.
winner.
It's not a passion. So that's been something that's really hard to just watch year after year, um, watching these mediocre teams. And we have to go to the postseason. I mean, we one game we missed this year, and then last year, it is so. Oh, it's like when people talk about the country of Brazil, and I'm going to be a little offensive here, but I've heard people say Brazil is the country of the future, and it always will be. And that's how I feel about the Mariners. They're the team of the future, and they always will be because they're not going to win the present. And I don't think the ownership is serious. And it's an investment. They have a very nice field. It's beautiful. Safeco is a very great park.
T-Mobile now.
Okay, T-Mobile. Yeah, all right. So that's how long it's been since I've watched the Mariners. But it's been really frustrating because I've talked to you before. I remember being a little boy going to the Kingdom and watching Julio Cruz knock out 2 home runs in a game. And it didn't cost an arm and a leg, even though we were in the nosebleed seats. And people were passing out from the thin air up there. But I don't feel like the Mariners are really a serious baseball organization. And I think it comes from the ownership and it goes down. And I don't know, these crazy contracts that the Dodgers cobbled together, paying at the very end of their career hundreds of millions of dollars or whatever. I don't know how that works, or if they put it in an investment fund or something to hope that there's enough money there at the end of their
Nope,
deal.
they have to set it aside per year to be able to pay that out later. So it's a way to keep the yearly payroll down, but still make that investment later on. Well, I'll make you a deal. If you don't want to spend an arm and a leg, we'll go to a uh, weeknight game. We've got value game tickets, $20 to get in the door, get you
Okay.
a couple of beers, and I will
No.
tell you more about the Mariners and their current structure and all of the young and exciting players that you're going to be sick of it by the time it's over, and you'll be like, fine, I'll be a fan, I'll be a fan, I'll be a fan.
All right. I'll do one better. Instead of buying those $20 beers, I'll do what I did to go to concerts back in the 80s. Back in the day, I would take whiskey and I'd put it in one of these freezer lock bags and I'd put it in the freezer lock thing so it'd suck all the air out. And you basically had this gel thing. And we had these big, long, striped socks. So you'd stick that in your sock and you'd put a couple rubber bands about it and you'd go right through. And then you'd buy a Coke, pour half of it out, and then put the whiskey in there.
For any T-Mobile security officers listening, will not tell you what game we're going to. So good luck, good luck finding him.
I'm sneaky as fuck.
Boom, we're one away from an explicit,
Okay, I'll let it go.
but,
Sorry.
but before we get to that point, I think that kind of encapsulates a little grab bag type thing. Expect some Mariners episodes coming, a little bit more on the Huskies as their guys that are going to the NFL and the guys that are coming in the door get more defined, and the Seahawks as their coaching search goes along. And be prepared for some mock drafts. We are getting into mock draft season, and we will be doing multiple on the lead up to the NFL draft, as that is one of my favorite things. It's a national holiday. I take off Thursday and Friday every single year of the NFL draft. It is like my second Christmas.
All righty.
But before we go, why don't you hop over and give us a little follow? You can find me on X at the real Coach Red, on Instagram at the real underscore Coach Red, TikTok at the real Coach Red. Also, find us over on YouTube. Search Kicking It with Coach Red. Like, subscribe, hit the bell notifications, leave a comment or two. And while you're at it, follow the show's page on X and Insta at Coach Red Pod. Follow us, follow us, follow us. Do it, freaking do it. And as always, stay fresh.
Heaps.
Peace.